Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to talk a little bit about Jamila Henna. I have been using Jamila Henna for approximately 10 years and I found it to be really great and reliable. Every year around July, mid to late July, they come out with a new crop of henna powder, and I have here with me the summer. It's kind of hard to see because this box is holographic and I don't know if I'm even gonna really try it. There we go. So this is the Super Sift Summer Crop 2019. You can see that there. And so I'm gonna go ahead and review this one. Each crop that they come out with has its own kind of characteristics, but consistently their henna performs really, really well. So I'm gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about my experience with Jamila Henna, just talk a little bit about what I see here. I'm gonna go ahead and mix them up and then we're gonna test it to see if it's any good. So there are a few things that I look for when I'm using a henna powder. I look at consistency, I look at color, I look at the smell, and then of course I look at, the stain that it leaves, which we'll get to later on. So what I see here just from the color, and I try to get the color to come through as true to color as it is in the camera as when I see it, and from what I can see in the viewfinder it does look pretty consistent. So it is kind of a light brown color, and henna can range anywhere from a dark brown color up to a bright green naturally. If you find that your henna looks a little bit rusty, it may have gone bad. But for as far as this henna powder, that's pretty consistent with the color that I've seen previous years from Jamila Henna. It is kind of a light green, kind of light brown color. Also, when you smell fresh henna, it smells like, it'll sometimes smell like wet hay, or it has kind of an earthy smell. I'm gonna go ahead and smell it. Yes, and it does have kind of an earthy, wet hay kind of smell, and that's completely normal. If you are smelling henna and it smells like old spices, if you've had a spice in your cabinet for a couple of years and you forgot about it and you take it out to use it, it kind of has an off smell. When your henna has gone old, it will have that off smell as well. It's very similar to old stale spices. So if your henna has a nice fresh, like wet hay or earthy smell, that's a good sign. And then as far as consistency, most of the henna that's exported to the US or to North America has been sifted, either double sifted or triple sifted, though it is still possible that you will find henna powders that have not been sifted at all. And by sifted, what do I mean by that? Henna comes from a plant, and plants have leaves, they have stems and other plant material. That sometimes can get left behind in the processing of the henna powder, and so you'll sometimes find like leaves and plant bits in your henna powder. The process to get rid of those is called sifting, and henna is sometimes double and triple sifted. So this is pretty well sifted. It has the consistency of like a talcum powder or a baby powder. Just touching it, it's very, very, very fine, which is a good sign. Though you still may want to sift or strain your henna before you use it. With this, it's so finely milled and it's so well sifted that you may not even have to do that. It'll just be an extra step. But if you are using applicator bottles, I highly recommend straining or sifting your henna powder before you use it, just so it flows through the bottle easily. If you're just using cones, you should be fine. So that's pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about the packaging and talk about a little bit where Jamila comes from. So I have this box here, which is closed. I do have an open box here. And then I have some of the interior packaging here. So I've been using Jamila well over 10 years. In that 10 years, the boxes have changed a little bit. As you can tell, it's really hard to not only photograph, but to film these boxes because they do have a holographic finish, which is really, really nice for packaging. I'm a sucker for packaging, so that's really nice. In the past, I know that the company that manufactures Jamila has had some issues with counterfeiting, and so they've done some things to their packaging to kind of counteract that, and their packaging does change slightly from year to year. Overall, this lady I call her the Jamila lady. I call her Jamila. She's been on the packaging forever. I remember when the boxes were slightly smaller, though they've always had 100 grams of henna in these boxes. There at one point was slightly smaller. They didn't have the holographic finish. It was just kind of a plain box. It's always had the crop date on it somewhere. Sometimes the crop date was here, and sometimes I've seen it on the inner lid of the box as well. And then I've also seen the crop date printed on the foil packaging as well. Oh, what is this? Some little dust there. Anyway, so yeah, it has the crop date on the bottom. It has some information about how to use the product on the side. And again, I know it's kind of hard to see because it's got a reflective coating on the box. It has Jamila in English, and then it's got some Urdu writing. Jamila is harvested and processed in Pakistan. And that's where I have always purchased it from. And then it has a barcode on the side here. It has some product descriptions, and then here it has a warning for external use only. And then it has the company. Here it's kind of hard to see. Let's see if it's easier to see on the one without the wrapper on it. No, not really. Sorry guys, it's just so reflective, but it really is beautiful in person to see it. And then it's made by Aberdeen Company in Lahore, Pakistan. So yeah, this is pretty much what it looks like. And then also something that isn't on the open box is it has a little holographic like little seal there. And the past boxes, those have been round. I guess this year they are rectangular. So that's something different. So it does have a clear packaging on the outside. It has the box, and then the henna in the interior is in this foil packaging. And then on the foil packaging is printed premium quality Jamila Henna. And the company that makes Jamila Henna does body art quality, and they've also done henna for hair in the past. I'm not sure if they're only doing body art quality now, but there's a difference in qualities between henna for hair and henna for skin. They're harvested from different parts of the plant. The leaves, I believe, at the top of the plant have the highest dye content, and those are the leaves that are used to do henna body art. The leaves from the bottom part of the plant have a lower dye content, and those are used for henna for hair. So that's where the difference kind of comes into play, because you want a stronger stain on the skin. The hair is a little bit different. I don't do henna for hair on my channel. This is strictly a body art channel. I am a hairstylist though, and so that's something that we can get into if you guys have enough questions about that. I am a licensed hairstylist. I did go to school for hair, so I do know something about coloring hair and about using henna for hair as well. So, but today we're just going to talk about henna for body art. So this is body art quality henna. An acronym that you'll see used for body art quality henna is BAQ, and that's exactly what that means, is body art quality, and that's what we're going to be using today. So comes in a foil packaging. It's 100 grams. They also have bags that have 250 grams in them, and those are available as well. If you're interested in buying Jamila Henna, I'll go ahead and put some links in the information box below for different places that you can buy it. Most of these are online retailers. I highly recommend buying your henna, if you're doing henna as a body artist, from a specialized retailer rather than just buying it from your local specialty grocery store, like a Middle Eastern, African, or Asian grocery store. I don't recommend buying your henna there, though you most certainly can if you choose to do so. I just find that you get a better quality when you buy from a specialized retailer. And so those who I have personally done business with, I'll put their information down below. I do have a couple of online retailers that are in North America and Asia, and also in Europe. And I've done business with all of these people, so I can vouch for them. And also I'll put a link down below for the company that harvests and manufactures Jamila. If you're wanting to buy in larger quantities, I'll put their website down below. I have also done business with them, and I can vouch for them that they're a good business to connect with. So now that I've talked a little bit about packaging and kind of my history and what my first initial thoughts are about the powder, I'm going to jump right in and go ahead and mix some of this up, and then I'm going to go ahead and test it. So I'm going to jump right in and add some of my henna tea. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I do have a video where I talk about, where I show you my secret henna paste recipe. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my henna tea. And I'm going to mix, I'm going to put some of that in. And my henna tea is a mixture of black tea, lemon juice, water, and sugar. Sometimes to that mixture I also add cloves and black pepper, but not today. And those things sometimes can cause sensitivities in the skin, so you have to be careful about adding things. But for today it's just black tea, lemon juice, sugar, and water. And again, I already have a video where I mix that and I give the exact measurement. So if you're wanting to know, I'll go ahead and put a link in the information box below. And I'll put a link in the comment section as well if you want to watch that video. But as far as measurements for my henna tea, I won't be, or the exact recipe, I won't be giving that in this video because I already have a video where I talk about that. So, and on the box, actually, there's a recipe. I'm not going to follow that recipe because mine is better. But it says, it's here on the side of the box, and of course it's hard to see because I've got my ring light on and it's a reflective coating on the box. But it just says how to use, and it's mix required quantity of henna Jamila with warm water and make a paste. After 5 hours, apply the paste and wash with fresh water when the paste is completely dry. I happen to think that that is a recipe for hair. I don't really think that's a recipe for skin. It does say that there is a 5-hour dye release time, which could be accurate. So we'll let it sit for 5 hours. Of course, it won't be 5 hours in this video. It will just be a matter of seconds for you, but it'll be 5 hours for me. So I'm just gonna mix it until I get the consistency that I like, which is usually like toothpaste or mashed potatoes. This may be a little bit too watery, maybe not, we'll see. If not, if you find that your henna is too watery, you just add more henna powder. Now I am struggling a little bit with my mixtures because I am temporarily living away from my permanent home for my husband's job, and so I'm in a new climate, and so I'm having to adjust my paste to this new climate, and so sometimes I either make it too thin or I make it too thick. I haven't mixed a lot of fresh henna here because I'm not building a clientele here because we're not staying here permanently. It's just temporary. Alright, I'm going to add just a little bit more powder here. That should be enough. You definitely don't want your henna to be too soupy. That's not a good thing. And if you are a beginner in using henna, I highly recommend using Jamila Henna. Of course I'm going to test this and we're going to find out if it's any good. But, and I'm pretty sure that it's going to be fine. I've been using it for 10 years and it's always been good. But if you're new to using henna, I highly recommend using Jamila because it's very user friendly. It's very easy to use. Some hennas are more temperamental. I'm just putting some of my supplies aside so I don't spill anything here. I'm not mixing in my kitchen today. But yeah, some hennas are just very temperamental. They're really difficult to use. The dye release time, they're very sensitive to temperature. I find that Jamila is really, really easy to use. Even if the temperature isn't exactly right or your mixing ratios aren't exactly right, you're still going to get this henna powder to perform really well. Some of the henna powders that I find that are really difficult and sometimes temperamental to use are Rajasthani henna and Moroccan henna. Those two, they're very sensitive to temperature. You got to get your mixing ratios right. Moroccan henna doesn't really like lemon juice, so on and so forth. I could go on and on about what henna powder likes what, but with Jamila, it's super easy to use. So if you're new to henna, highly recommend starting out with Jamila. Rajasthani henna is also great for beginners to use because it's really easy to apply with. You just have to get your henna paste recipe down right, and you can always use mine. In fact, in my secret henna paste mixing video, I'm actually using Rajasthani. So if you want to follow my recipe, you know, step by step, you're welcome to do that and you should be fine. But highly recommend Jamila. And Jamila is also one of the henna powders that just isn't as expensive as others, and it's perfectly good. In fact, a lot of professional henna artists do use Jamila. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's not a cheap quality henna. It's a very good henna. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add some sugar, and this is just plain white table sugar. And again, I'm not going to go step by step over how much I'm using of what ingredient because I already have a video that covers that. I'm just going to show you how it mixes here. And the purpose of adding sugar is to keep the henna from drying too quickly and allowing it to stick to the skin really well. And then also it helps you to drape your lines really easily. You want to be careful in adding too much sugar because it can make your henna paste gummy. And because I have so much experience, I have been doing henna, my goodness, for over 20 years. And so I have a lot of experience where I can just eye my ingredients. I used to have exact measurements when I was making henna cones to sell. But because I don't make henna cones or henna paste to sell anymore, I don't follow an exact recipe. I just kind of eye it. The only exact recipe I have is the one that's in the video that I've mentioned several times already, which of course I will link in the information box, and I will also link in the comment section. Now I'm going to add a little bit of essential oil. I'm using tea tree today, and this is Now brand, which is sold by Amazon and is also sold in Whole Foods, which is owned by Amazon. I'll put links down below, but you can use whichever brand that you prefer, but I'm using tea tree today. I really do love tea tree because of its natural antifungal properties. It's really great for dandruff, so if you are mixing henna for hair, adding a bit of tea tree is really great for your scalp if you're experiencing a lot of itching or any dandruff. It's a great antifungal. But if you are mixing henna for hair, you're definitely going to want to leave the sugar out. You don't need that. But anyway, that's not what this video is about. So back to talking about the Jamila. So just looking at the paste, now that we've added all the ingredients, it is turning to a darker brown, which is perfectly fine. That's normal. And you see that, you can see some of that dry henna powder here on my spatula. So it's a lighter color. It's not uncommon for a henna paste to turn a darker color once you mix it. When the powder itself was a lighter color, that's completely normal. It does have some lumps in it, which once it sits for a while and goes through dye release, which I'm going to sit for 5 hours, those should work themselves out. But if they don't, then I'll just go ahead and strain it. So it's pretty much what it looks like, which is consistent with what it's looked like in the past. It was really, really easy to mix, didn't have any problems. I don't see any stakes or leaves or any sort of plant matter in here. It's very, very well sifted and milled. And I have no doubt that it's going to stain absolutely beautiful. But I'm going to go ahead and let this sit. It's going to be 5 hours for me, but just a couple of seconds for you. I'm going to go ahead and test it on my skin and see what kind of stain that I get, and then I'll give you my final recommendation for this particular crop of Jamila Henna. Alright friends, so I have had the henna sitting out for approximately 5 hours, though it's only been a few seconds for you. And as you can see, there are minimal lumps here, if any at all, and that's just from henna that just hasn't blended all the way. Typically when I let my henna paste sit longer, those lumps are gone. You can also see it's a nice beautiful chocolate color, which is completely different from what the henna powder looked like, and that's completely normal as well. It did go through a dye release, so when I started to mix it, there were 2 tones of color in the paste, and now it's just one. If you are unfamiliar with what dye release means, or if you're confused on how to tell whether it's happened or not, I do have a video where I go into dye release in deep detail, and I'll go ahead and put a link to that video in the information box, and I'll go ahead and put a link here in the video as well. It should pop up at the top there. So it is silky smooth, so beautiful, oh my goodness. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I am going to test patch this henna in 2 places. I'm going to put it on the palm of my right hand, and then I'm also going to put it on the back of my hand as well, just to see what kind of stain that we get, and then I'll put another test patch on my arm. I'm going to let that sit for 24 hours, or for the stain to develop over the next 24 hours. And then I'll be back to show you the result. Of course, it will only be a couple of seconds for you, but it will be tomorrow for me. And we'll see how dark this stain gets and what kind of happens with the henna itself. So far, so good. I'm experiencing what I've come to know Jamila Henna to be over the last 10 years or so that I have used it. It's always been consistent. It's always been a really good henna powder, and they've consistently developed a really good crop. So anyway, I did have a couple of questions that have come up in the comments on the videos. If you are buying Jamila Henna from supermarkets or some sort of like Indian, Asian, or African or Middle Eastern grocery, sometimes those boxes have been sitting on a shelf, sometimes in direct sunlight. They've been exposed to extreme heat, and the crop date on those boxes can sometimes be really old. So I have heard that people have had less than stellar experiences with Jamila Henna, and it's usually because those boxes are either really old or they've been exposed to high heat over an extended period of time or direct sunlight, and that can degrade the henna itself. Henna should be stored in a proper environment, a cool, dark environment, or you can actually freeze henna powder as well. So if you are buying henna, Jamila Henna specifically, from a grocery or a specialty store, go ahead and check the very bottom of the box. And again, this is reflective, so it's kind of hard to see. Let me flip that around so you can read it. Let's see if it'll focus. It's kind of hard to focus, but you can see 2019 there. It will give you the crop date on the bottom of the box, and if your crop date doesn't say 2017, 18, or 19, then what you have is really old and you need to not buy it. So that would just be my advice to you, is to check the crop date on the bottom of the box, and then you'll be able to get a better experience knowing that you have something that's fresh. I typically don't use henna that's more than 2 years old, so any henna that I currently have is from 2017 or more recent. I don't use anything older than that. That doesn't mean that anything older than that isn't any good. It's just that the staining quality for something older than that is just not going to be its best. And I always want the absolute best stain out of my henna. That's the goal anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead, like I said, and put this on my skin on the palm of my hand. I'm not gonna do a design, I'm just gonna do a test patch. I'm going to do some henna on, apply a test patch to the back of my hand, and then probably some on my arm as well. And we'll see what kind of stain that we get from it. And I'll be back in the next slide and show you what's happened. Hello everyone. While it's only been a couple of seconds for you, it's actually been 48 hours for me, and I do apologize for the sound of my voice, as I am a little bit under the weather. I'm not feeling so great, so sorry for not sounding as chipper as I have in the previous 2 parts of the video, but I did go ahead and do some swatch testing on my hands and my arm just for you guys, so you guys can see the result of the Jamila Henna. So the first thing is I'm going to explain briefly how I did the swatches and why I did them the way I did them. And then second, I'm going to show you the result of the swatches. So the first thing that I did is I let the henna dye release for 5 hours, and then I went ahead and did swatches in 3 places on my skin. And then I let the henna sit out overnight. So it dye released overnight for probably about 15 hours, I'm estimating. And then I swatched again and then waited another 24 hours so we could get a good stain development. I did it that way for 2 reasons, because I typically let my henna sit out overnight. I don't typically let it dye release for 5 hours, and I have a lot of experience using Jamila, and I have never let it dye release for 5 hours and then used it. So I just wanted to get a clear result for you guys. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the palm of my hand, and there are 2 swatches on the palm of my hand. You will see here. You see there's a lighter one, and then there's a much darker one that's a beautiful kind of maroon, red maroon color. So this is the swatch at 5 hours dye release, and this is the swatch with the paste that had released overnight. So as you can see, the best result you're going to get is if you let that henna paste dye release for longer and let it sit out and dye release overnight instead of just for 5 hours as is instructed on the box. And what's on the box may be instructions for dyeing hair and may not be for skin, even though the box it is a body art quality box, body art quality henna. So I'm not sure why it would have instructions for mixing henna for hair, but that may be what we have here. Next, I'm going to show you the back of my hand here. And by mistake, these swatches overlapped a little bit, but they came out approximately the same. So this is the original swatch, and then this is the second swatch I did, and that little dark mark in between the two is actually what ended up the result. So it's just kind of a light rusty color, which isn't so great. And then next I'm going to show you the swatches on my arm, and this is just above my wrist. This is the one with 5 hours dye release, and this is the overnight. One is just slightly darker than the other, but not substantially, but it's just kind of like a rusty brown color. So I got a really nice, beautiful, rich red on the palms, which if I were to put this on my feet, I would get that same result. It just looks like the back of the hand is just kind of a rusty brown color, and then this is really, I mean, it's not super dark. I will tell you, I forgot to mention this, that the first time around I let the henna sit on my skin for 2 hours, and the second time around I let it sit on for 4 hours. So that can also make a difference. But when I saw that first stain, I thought I better keep it on for longer. It's just that the first time around I did the swatches, I just couldn't have the henna on. I had some other things that I needed to do, and having henna on for more than 2 hours just wasn't going to fit in my schedule. But the second time around I had plenty of time. So I just wanted to let you guys see the result. I will say that the stain on my palm, that darker red stain, is absolutely gorgeous. That's what you're shooting for, and that's what I've come to expect with Jamila. It's just the stain on the back of my hand isn't anything spectacular or special, and then the one just above my wrist isn't really anything spectacular or special either. So it's a pretty good henna to use. If you're gonna use Jamila, as someone who's new to henna, I highly recommend it. I would say that this, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the absolute best and 1 being complete trash, I would give this henna powder a rating of probably 3.5, which is pretty good. It's just that the instructions on the box are not accurate for the product, and I knew that going in. And then also, also the stain on the upper arm really isn't that great. On the back of the hand, that stain is somewhat acceptable. It's okay. And then this is absolutely gorgeous stain, which the the skin on your foot and the skin on the palms of your hands are very similar. So if you were to put this on your feet, you would probably get this nice, rich, dark stain instead of that one, which is acceptable, but I've gotten better stains. If you're a more experienced henna artist and you mix your henna powders, I would say probably mix 50% Jamila, 50% Rajasthani, or do a quarter Jamila and 3/4 Rajasthani henna if you're wanting to get rich dark stains on the on the backs of the hands and on the arms and on the legs as well. But I would say, again, 3.5 out of 5 stars. I would say that this henna is pretty good. It's really easy to use. And the final result, even though I have it, it's been in the freezer. It's frozen here, you can see. The henna paste mixed smoothly. Even though it still had some bumps in it at the 5-hour dye release mark, once I let it sit overnight, it was so beautiful and silky smooth. There were no lumps, no clumps, no plant bits, nothing. It is very well sifted, very well milled, and Jamila is still a-okay in my book. So I still highly recommend this. Again, my henna mixing video, I will have a link available for that. Also, for those of you who wish to sift or strain your henna, I do have videos for that as well, and I'll put links for those as well. In the information box below, there will be links to several different retailers that I have personally done business with, where you can buy the Jamila Henna, and I hope this will be good resources for you. Thank you so much for watching. I certainly appreciate your time. Please leave your comments in the comment section below, and please rate the video and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Take care, friends.